you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Once when Jesus was praying in solitude, and the disciples were with him, he asked them, "Who do the crowds say I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others, one of the ancient prophets has arisen." Then he said to them, "But who do you say I am?" Peter said in reply, "The Christ of God." He rebuked them and directed them not to tell this to anyone. He said, "The Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised." Then he said to all, "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will save it." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
You know, it's funny how at different times, different ages, so to speak, in the history of this parish, things happen that didn't happen before that, and I don't know how long they continue to happen, but lately there have been a good number of people outside of the parish, not only in other Roman Catholic parishes, but in non-Catholic, let's say, traditions. One fellow who comes in for pastoral care is the son of an Episcopal priest. So, you know, his dad was a priest, so he's pretty much feeling comfortable with the situation here. But in any case, one such person who was in was telling me that because she had lost somebody who was very near and dear to her, she felt angry at God. And of course, in bereavement counseling, you understand that there's a lot of anger, you know. It isn't just acceptance and bargaining and so on and so forth. It's rage, it's guilt, it's anger. All of these things come together in kind of like a big ball. That's how they teach it these days. They don't make it linear. And even when they made it linear, they didn't say it was all going to come in that same order. It was somewhat unpredictable. But this individual was angry at God every so often. And she told her parish priest that, and he says, no, you shouldn't be angry at God. Now, you go see Sister Rita the next time she's here. I dropped her at the airport yesterday. That's where the confusion is. I didn't go with her. I'm going to go later, Wednesday. But the idea is that she'll say, don't should yourself. Shoulds are sometimes very, very harmful. So, you know, I didn't say because of that, but I did say to her, don't you think maybe that God is a little bit happier with somebody getting angry at him than totally ignoring him as though he didn't even exist? I mean, if you look at the prophets, they rail against God. Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to somehow represent you? All of a sudden I can't shut my mouth, and I'm getting myself in all kinds of trouble by being your prophet, your mouthpiece. So in any case, you know, I said, well, don't you think that God would rather not be ignored? And then this brings me to another situation with another family that lives somewhere in Long Beach, and they live out on the water, you know, next to the marina, and those apartments there. And they were having a problem because they felt that there was some presences in their place. In fact, I have in my cell phone a photograph of something kind of floating out there. And see, everybody nods. I never saw that much in my life, but it's getting more and more commonplace. I've been pulled up to operating rooms in the hospital, and different things. Well, I came to this home, and I saw this picture, and I sat in the very room where this young woman had seen that. And what she had said, and I hope I didn't tell you this story, but if I did, you get to hear it again. She said, she opened up, looked up and saw this. Now, she was kind of sensitive to that sort of thing. I had an uncle who had ESP. It was amazing, incredible. But she was sort of sensitive to these things, and she'd sought them out. She'd gone to haunted houses, and she'd gone down to Queen Mary for the spook tour and all that sort of thing. So she was given to that sort of thing, so that when she was on the couch falling asleep in the living room, she looked up and she saw this figure floating here, and a mirror, in fact, you know, just like the stories are, it's an antique mirror, was leaning up against where the fireplace was, and in the mirror she saw all sorts of different individuals of different racial backgrounds inside the mirror. And this guy's floating here. So anyway, she thought that was fascinating. So she craned her eye and looked at him, and he went, looked at her like that, and she goes, whoa! She ran back into her parents' room, jumped into bed, and started getting all scared and everything like that. So they called me in. They probably called several Catholic parishes, and that didn't do much good. So I went in, and I had a little bite to eat, and then we sat down and talked about what had happened. And I said, well, let's do a different kind of pull on this story. You think that this spirit was going to be harming you? She goes, yeah. I said, well, supposing this spirit, who was dressed up like Don Quixote, don't have to lie. I mean, I started looking for tragedies in Halloween time and people in costumes and stuff. No, I didn't find it. I said, supposing this person has been wandering through eternity and was such a real pain in the neck that not one person even prayed for him when he died. He was a kind of person, sort of like one Monsignor in the diocese where the guy said when he died, people had pins just to make sure he was gone. You can imagine that? That's a priest saying it about a Monsignor. So it was one of these people that just they had no business for. Nobody prayed for him. He didn't do anything good in his life, but you know, he wasn't the worst in the world. And maybe his purgatory was to be wandering around, you know, not knowing which way to go. Needing prayer, nobody giving him prayer. So I spun this little story. And I suppose you look there and you say, oh, look at that. And he goes, do you see me? Do you notice me? Wow. That began, with that interpretation, a prayer for him, a continuing prayer for him that she did for his moving on. And the other thing was that she went back to church. And her parents were completely confounded that she actually went back to church. So perhaps this individual was able to move on to the joy of heaven and the love of heaven because this encounter happened. I made all that up. But the bottom line is, it worked. And the idea is that you see me, you notice me. In today's gospel, Jesus says, who do people say I am? I mean, what do you think of me? Do you notice me? Do you hear me? What do you have to say? Which is a question that we can then turn over to this community here. The community is a little worried, people are leaving and all that sort of thing. I'm saying, why do people come here? The real reason for coming here, through word and sacrament, not through personality, not to hear the latest gossip, not to look around and criticize, not to expect perfection of anybody here, including the clergy, but to come here because what we do makes Christ present in many ways. First of all, we'll right away say Christ is present in the Eucharist. Now the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. The implications of that are His joining with us, becoming part of us by being our spiritual food. And that is once again meaning we're becoming like Christ. Secondly, where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in their midst. We gather right away in the name of Christ and in the name of God. Meaning that Christ is also present among you in a real presence. So there's a real presence here, there's a real presence there. And then in the minister, despite himself, is believed to be the presence of Christ in a special way, and in the proclamation of the Word. How many is that? Proclamation of the Word, in among us, Eucharist, and in the minister. This place is somehow full of the presence of Christ. And I think when we are so concerned about so many other things except for what we receive in Word and Sacrament, we can be waylaid. And maybe what's happening here is Jesus is saying, can anybody see me? Who do you say that I am? Let us rise and profess our faith. I believe in one God,
Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth.
I believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, born of the Father before all ages, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten not made, consubstantial with the Father. Through him all things were made. For us men and for our salvation.